The back musculature is another one of those areas that really increases the overall aesthetics of your physique. Yet the exercises that are required to create a wide and thick back are often performed with improper form, which diminishes the potential slabs of muscle you can add to the back musculature as a whole. Now, since it's not a show muscle like the chest, shoulders and arms, it doesn't get nearly as much attention as it truly needs, and that will show in your physique. In order to train the back correctly, there are a couple of things that you need to know before initiating your back workouts. Now, first off, let's start out with the anatomy of the back musculature. Now, there are lots of muscles in the back, and I'm talking lots, some of which are also part of the shoulder complex, but the main ones that we're going to be focusing on to grow the back as a whole are the trapezius, which is in the middle of the back and can be divided in an upper, middle and lower part, all of which utilize different muscular functions. The latissimus dorsi, or the lats, which lies more on the outside of the back musculature, and the rhomboid major and minor, which also aid to retract the scapula. The upper trapezius is responsible for scapular elevation, which is commonly performed in a shrug type movement. The middle trapezius is responsible for scapular retraction, which is commonly performed with rowing type movements, and to stabilize your shoulders during chest movements. The lower trapezius is responsible for scapular depression and serve as a stabilizer for the scapula, and the latissimus dorsi is responsible for shoulder extension and shoulder adduction. And by knowing these muscular functions, you can tweak any exercise to target more of the trapezius or more of the lats, depending on what muscle you personally want to target more. And besides these muscles in the upper back, you of course also have the erector spinae, which are the lower back muscles, which contribute a lot to the Christmas tree look that you get when you're performing a back pose. The erector spinae primarily serves to extend the vertebral column. Now, since there are two quote-unquote areas of the back, it's important to select exercises that target both the trapezius and the lats to ensure you're developing a well-proportioned back in terms of width and thickness. Now, going by the muscular functions, I'm going to select a couple of exercises which have shown over and over again to be extremely effective in targeting these areas, ensuring you're utilizing the proper progression modalities and maintaining proper form while doing so. Now, the pull-up is widely known as somewhat the king of back exercises, especially when it comes to the lats. While this is definitely true and can serve as a great compound exercise for the back, not everyone can perform enough pull-ups to stimulate hypertrophy enough. And even though a lot of people claim to find it the best back exercise out there for their back, I personally find that the pull-up doesn't really do that much for me personally, and I know that I'm not alone on that one. So keep in mind, multiple ways lead to Rome, so try it out for yourself before drawing any conclusions, since we're mostly focused on movement patterns that stimulate the back. And when going over the biomechanics of the back, a lat pull down is another solid option to stimulate the lats. Now, there are some tricks that you can use in terms of biomechanical setup to really isolate the lats to your best capability, but since those are quite advanced techniques, I'll link to a video that I've made on these techniques in the cards and in the description box of this video. Now, when setting up for the lat pull down, ensure that you're using a grip of approximately 1.5 times shoulder width. A common belief is that when we grip the bar as wide as possible, our back is going to become as wide as possible. Now, unfortunately, that's not the case, so in order to utilize a full range of motion and stimulate as much muscle fibers as possible, a 1.5 times shoulder width is probably your best choice. Retract and depress your shoulder blades before pulling the weight down to put the back muscles under tension. Keep your elbows slightly in front of the body, so not directly to your sides, since you'll otherwise miss out on quite some lat activation, and primarily target the trapezius and the rear delts. Lean back just slightly to put the lats in a better line of pull with the weight, then pull the weight down to your upper chest, ensuring you're utilizing a full range of motion. Really squeeze the back and slowly let the weight travel back to the beginning position. Now, if you tend to notice you're tackling on other muscle groups as you go through this exercise, then always be cautious to retract and depress your shoulder blades again after going through a rep, since it's very easy to lose that tight scapular positioning, and that will cause you to lose tension off the back, which is not the goal. Now, as I mentioned, there are lots of back exercises that you can choose from to target the lats effectively, so you can opt for a close grip pull down, a unilateral pull down, a neutral grip pull down, you name it. Now, as long as you keep the same principles in check, you'll ensure that your back is being stimulated to its best capabilities. Now, in terms of the rep range, it's definitely safe to say that there is some merit to periodizing between heavier weights and lighter weights. So my general recommendation is to have a mix between days where you perform sets in the 8 to 10 rep range and days where you perform sets with around 10 to 15 reps to get the best out of both worlds. The trapezius will greatly determine the thickness of the back if well developed. Now, as mentioned in the beginning of this video, you need to utilize the correct muscular functions in order to stimulate the traps effectively during your exercises. There isn't really a direct correlation between the stimulation of the traps or lats and the angle in which you perform your exercises. Now, it's commonly believed that vertical pulls target the lats more and horizontal pulls target the traps more, but given that it's mostly down to the biomechanics which you perform the exercises with, it doesn't exactly matter which exercises you pick, as long as you perform it correctly with emphasis on the muscles that you personally want to target. Let's take the low row machine as an example. The lats are primarily stimulated through shoulder extension, and you're actually better able to perform this movement pattern on a row than a lat pull down, while the row is often more seen as a trap builder and not a lat builder. But again, on the contrary, it's up to you how you set up for this exercise, which will greatly determine how you target the back, regardless of the angle. To put the trapezius under the greatest amount of stress, you need to perform scapular retraction during your movements. Now, a cue that's often used to target the trapezius better is to go through protraction and retraction. However, I've personally found that I don't really feel my trapezius better and actually get more rear delt activation from that cue. Instead, try to keep yourself in thoracic extension as maximally as possible and actually try to stay in this position as you go through the concentric and the eccentric motion. This way, the trapezius will be under tension throughout the entire duration of the exercise, which is the goal to develop the muscle as maximally as you can. Which is the goal if you want to specifically grow the trapezius as a whole. Now, even if you do utilize scapular protraction and retraction, at least be sure to retract the scapula again before you initiate the concentric part of the movement. Now, in general, I'd advise you to pick a compound type row like a dumbbell row, a T-bar row, or a bent over row to put the greatest amount of stress on the back and to enable yourself to overload the exercise as efficiently as you can. Even though, regardless if you pick a T-bar row, a bent over row, a dumbbell row, or any type of rowing exercise, pick an exercise that you can stimulate the back maximally with, ensuring you're keeping the biomechanical functions in check. The rep range for this exercise will be pretty much the same as the lat pull down, a mix between 8 to 10 reps with a heavier weight and 10 to 15 reps with a lighter weight will be your best choice to get the best out of both worlds. Another problem that a lot of people run into is that they don't feel their back when performing these exercises, or any back exercise for that matter. To combat this, a great cue to start activating your back is to hold an isometric contraction at the top end of the concentric part of the movement. Meaning, you'll hold the weight in position, really focusing on the squeeze of the back to establish a better mind-muscle connection. Now, while a lot of people think that the mind-muscle connection is a bunch of bro science, think of it logically. If you can't create a neurological connection with the muscle that you're training, are you really putting it under the greatest amount of stress? Another great technique to feel your back during your exercises better is to perform a sort of pre-exhaustion method. Now, you can do this with a resistance band by simply doing some pullovers, some rows or pull downs, or just simply going through your back exercises with a light weight for higher reps first, before moving on to your actual working sets. Another great way to feel more activation of the back during your back exercises is to slow down the eccentric motions of the movement, meaning you will go through the stretch in a more controlled fashion, and potentially even going up to 2 to 3 seconds on the negative or eccentric part of the movement. Now, in order to get the most out of your back development, it's crucial to progressively overload your exercise selection. Progressive overload comes in a lot of different modalities, and it all comes down to increasing your total volume over time. You can increase the amount of sets, increase the amount of reps performed up to a certain degree, and you can increase the amount of weight used, also up to a certain degree, before form starts to break down. So by utilizing a mix between these three modalities, always ensuring you're maintaining proper form not going over approximately 20 sets per week, and holding on to a certain rep range, reaching the top end of the rep range before making an increase in weight, you'll be on your way to creating a well-developed and proportioned back. Alright, and that is all for this video, guys. I sincerely hope you all enjoyed. If you thought this video was informative and helped you out in any way, shape or form, then please consider hitting the like button, because it helps spread out the video to a lot more people and helps the channel grow. Comment down below on what you like and what you would like to see next. Subscribe to the channel and turn post notifications on for so much more content coming really soon. I'm out, guys, and peace out. See you in the next one.